In the realm of communication, silence is often viewed as an absence, something that simply fills a gap or signifies the end of a conversation. However, silence can be a powerful tool, far more influential than many realize. When used strategically, silence transcends mere quietness. It becomes a potent form of communication that can sway emotions, shape perceptions, and even control outcomes. In both everyday interactions and high-stakes situations, the power of silence plays a significant role in dark psychology and manipulation. Silence has the unique ability to create an atmosphere of tension and anticipation. People are naturally uncomfortable with silence, especially in emotionally charged moments. When someone chooses not to respond, it often creates a feeling of uncertainty, leaving others to fill the void with their own assumptions or actions. This discomfort is not only powerful, it's controllable. By strategically withholding words, one can influence the pace of a conversation, cause others to reveal more than they intended, and even shift power dynamics in a subtle yet effective manner. The power of silence also works to distance and detach emotionally. In relationships and negotiations, remaining silent can make someone seem indifferent or in control. This emotional distance can leave others feeling insecure or anxious, leading them to act in ways they wouldn't otherwise. Silence becomes a psychological tool, silently exerting pressure, inducing self-doubt, and forcing others to seek validation or make concessions. Understanding the dynamics of silence can enhance one's ability to navigate complex social interactions, whether in personal relationships, professional settings, or during moments of conflict. Recognizing when and how to use silence effectively gives one an advantage, providing an edge in the art of persuasion and psychological influence. Number 1. The power of social proof, the smartphone sale. Experience. Social proof is one of the most effective psychological tools used in marketing, persuasion, and even personal interactions. The concept is simple yet profound. People are influenced by the actions, opinions, or behaviors of others, especially when they are unsure of what to do themselves. The phenomenon, often referred to as social influence, can be seen in a variety of scenarios, from product purchases to decision-making in social groups. A powerful example of social proof in action can be seen in the world of retail, particularly in a situation I encountered while buying a smartphone. In 2016, I walked into a local electronics store with the intention of purchasing a specific phone that I had researched online. However, upon arriving at the store, I discovered that the model I was interested in was out of stock. Instead of walking away or asking for a refund, the salesperson quickly redirected my attention to another phone, one that was slightly more expensive, but still in the same price range. The salesman then took things a step further. He casually pulled the same phone from his pocket and showed me that he was using it, claiming it was the best phone available at the time. This seemingly small gesture was incredibly impactful. By showing me that he himself used and trusted the phone, he introduced the concept of social proof into the sales pitch. His action communicated to me that this phone was a trusted choice, one that not only professionals but also everyday users relied on. This act of demonstrating social proof had a subtle yet undeniable effect on my decision-making process. Instead of merely evaluating the phone on its features or my initial research, I was now considering it as the right choice because the salesperson, someone I perceived as knowledgeable, endorsed it. The fact that he was using it personally made it seem like the phone had been vetted by someone I could trust. It wasn't just about the phone's specs anymore. It was about the implicit approval from someone else, someone whose opinion seemed to hold weight in that moment. In essence, the social proof he provided made the phone seem like a more valuable and trustworthy choice. Consequently, I ended up purchasing the phone, even though it wasn't the one I had originally intended to buy. This phenomenon of social proof is not unique to this instance. It happens all the time, especially in situations where we feel uncertain or unsure about what decision to make. It's often used in marketing strategies, where brands create a sense of popularity or desirability for a product by showcasing how many people are buying it, using it, or endorsing it. For example, you may have noticed that many businesses include testimonials, star ratings, or the phrase "most popular choice" in their advertising materials. These are all examples of social proof designed to create the illusion that a product or service is highly valued by the majority, thus influencing potential buyers to follow suit. In a broader context, social proof doesn't just apply to purchases. It extends to behavior, ideas, and even emotions. People often turn to social media to see how others are reacting to current events, trends, or situations. If a large group of people supports a certain idea or takes a particular action, others are more likely to follow, believing that it must be the right choice or the most popular option. This herd mentality can be seen in everything from viral trends to political opinions, and it's a powerful tool for influencing behavior. In conclusion, the smartphone sale experience demonstrated how social proof, though subtle, is an incredibly powerful force. It can alter perceptions, influence decisions, and even steer people toward choices they hadn't initially considered. Recognizing the power of social proof can help individuals become more aware of the psychological forces shaping their decisions, and can also empower them to use this knowledge to influence others in a variety of contexts. Number 2. Love bombing, the dangerous charm. Love bombing is a manipulative psychological tactic that involves overwhelming someone with excessive affection, attention, and compliments to gain control over them. While it may initially appear as a romantic gesture or sincere interest, love bombing is often used to manipulate and exploit the target's emotions for personal gain. The danger lies in how this behavior can create intense emotional bonds quickly, leaving the victim vulnerable to further manipulation and control. Though commonly associated with romantic relationships, love bombing can also occur in friendships, family dynamics, or even in professional environments. The process of love bombing typically begins with an intense period of affection and flattery. Imagine you meet someone new, and they immediately shower you with compliments, gifts, and attention. They may declare that you are the one, or that they feel a deep connection with you after only a short period of time. At first, it might feel flattering and exciting. Who wouldn't enjoy feeling adored and special? However, this overwhelming behavior serves a strategic purpose: to create a sense of dependency. By making you feel that you are the center of their world, the manipulator establishes control over your emotions. The psychological mechanism behind love bombing is based on the principle of reinforcement. In the early stages of the relationship, the target is flooded with positive reinforcement, constant praise, affection, and gifts, which leads to a rush of endorphins and dopamine, chemicals in the brain associated with happiness and attachment. These positive feelings can become addictive, creating an emotional high that the victim subconsciously craves. Over time, the manipulator uses this emotional dependency to keep the victim hooked. They may even exaggerate their emotional connection, making the target believe that they are irreplaceable, deepening the victim's attachment. However, once the manipulator feels they have gained the trust and emotional dependence of their target, they begin to withdraw the affection and attention. This sudden change can be disorienting for the victim, who may feel confused and anxious. The person who was once so loving and affectionate now becomes distant, cold, or even critical. This shift creates an emotional void, which the victim will often try to fill by seeking the affection that was once so abundant. As a result, they may agree to things they normally wouldn't, just to regain the approval and attention that they once received. This emotional roller coaster, where affection is given, then withdrawn, leads to a cycle of manipulation as the target becomes more and more invested in winning back the love they once had. Love bombing is particularly dangerous because it can be hard to recognize in the moment. The manipulator may seem genuinely caring, and their behavior can be so intense that it feels like true love or friendship. However, this is a calculated strategy designed to make the victim emotionally dependent and more malleable to control. The target may ignore red flags, believing that the intense attention is a sign of genuine love or care. As the cycle of affection and withdrawal continues, the victim may become increasingly trapped, unable to escape the emotional hold the manipulator has over them. In many cases, love bombing can lead to emotional trauma. The victim may experience feelings of worthlessness, confusion, and insecurity, often questioning their own value and self-worth. Over time, they may lose their sense of independence and self-confidence, becoming reliant on the manipulator for emotional validation. This can have long-lasting effects on their mental health, affecting future relationships and their ability to trust others. Number 3, the persuasive power of reason. Why logic isn't always logical. In the world of manipulation and persuasion, one of the most powerful tools is logic. The use of reason, appealing to a person's sense of logic, can make an argument seem irrefutable and lead the target to make decisions they might not otherwise have made. But what many don't realize is that logic is not always as rational as it appears. In fact, the persuasive power of reason is often used as a tool for manipulation, where logical arguments are designed to sway opinions, obscure facts, and manipulate decisions. This tactic capitalizes on the fact that many people place a high value on logic and reason, assuming that anything framed in a logical context must be true or valid. Imagine you are approached by two individuals asking for money. One simply says, "I need money," while the other offers a reason, explaining that they've been hungry since yesterday and are in urgent need of help. Most people are far more likely to give money to the second individual, even though both requests are for the same outcome. The key difference here is the reasoning behind the request. The logical argument, "I am hungry," makes it easier for the person to empathize with the need, even though it might not be the most logical approach. This shows how powerful the perception of logic can be in influencing decisions, despite it not necessarily being grounded in reality. Manipulators understand this psychological tendency and exploit it by creating compelling, logical-sounding reasons to justify their actions or requests. For instance, a con artist might approach a target with a convincing argument backed by seemingly irrefutable facts to make the target believe that an action, like investing in a scam or participating in a criminal act, is a reasonable and necessary choice. The manipulator uses reason not to present the truth, but to obscure it. By weaving a logical narrative, they can make their request seem reasonable and even urgent, thus compelling the victim to act in their favor. This tactic of using reason to persuade is particularly effective when the manipulator knows that the target is seeking a solution to a problem. For example, if someone is in financial distress, a manipulator might present an argument that seems logical on the surface, offering a solution that solves the problem but actually leads to further harm. The person may be persuaded to make decisions that are not in their best interest because they believe the argument they are being presented with is rational. In these situations, the manipulator is preying on the target's vulnerability and need for a quick, logical solution. The reason this technique works so well is because people are naturally inclined to believe that logical arguments are truthful and valid. We are trained to trust reason and to consider it a reliable guide for making decisions. However, this blind trust in logic can be exploited by those who are skilled in crafting persuasive narratives that sound logical, but are actually misleading. They may rely on half-truths, false premises, or omissions of important details to make their argument seem airtight. This is often seen in high-pressure sales tactics or even in criminal enterprises, where a seemingly logical explanation is given to justify unethical or harmful actions. Even when faced with facts that contradict the manipulator's argument, a person might continue to follow the logical reasoning presented to them because it feels more comfortable and intellectually satisfying. This cognitive bias is known as confirmation bias, where individuals are more likely to accept information that aligns with their existing beliefs or desires, especially when that information is presented in a logical, coherent manner. In conclusion, the persuasive power of reason is not always as objective or rational as it seems. Manipulators use logic to craft compelling arguments that obscure the truth and persuade individuals to act in ways that benefit the manipulator, often at the victim's expense. Understanding how reason can be distorted for manipulative purposes is crucial in protecting oneself from being misled. Just because something sounds logical doesn't mean it is always the right decision. It's important to critically assess the reasoning behind any argument and consider all the facts before being swayed. Number 4. Self-abasement. Playing the humble card. Self-abasement is a psychological tactic that manipulates others by inducing guilt or sympathy through exaggerated humility or self-deprecation. While genuine humility is a positive trait, manipulators take it a step further by using it strategically to gain favor, sympathy, or even control over others. This tactic is particularly effective because it plays on human empathy and our natural desire to help others, especially when they appear vulnerable or down on themselves. When someone lowers their own status or reputation, it creates an immediate power dynamic where others feel inclined to uplift them, often without questioning the motivations behind the self-abasement. The key to using self-abasement as a manipulative tool is the balance between showing vulnerability and asking for validation. A manipulator who is skilled in this technique will present themselves as someone who is deeply flawed or struggling, creating a sense of concern and a desire to offer help. For example, in relationships, a person might say, "I'm terrible at relationships. I always mess things up. No one could ever love someone like me." By doing so, they evoke a response from the other person, who is likely to feel sympathetic and, as a result, offer reassurance or validation. This reassured individual may then become more emotionally invested in helping the manipulator, giving the manipulator more control over the dynamic. In addition to inducing sympathy, self-abasement also has a unique way of diverting attention away from the manipulator's own actions or flaws. By presenting themselves as inadequate, the manipulator shifts the focus away from their own behavior or mistakes, forcing others to focus on their emotional state or their perceived shortcomings. This technique works especially well in close relationships, where the emotional bond makes people more inclined to support or protect their partner from perceived harm, real or imagined. For example, if someone consistently apologizes for small mistakes or behaves in an overly self-deprecating way, their partner might feel obligated to reassure them or forgive their actions, even if they don't deserve it. A classic example of self-abasement as a manipulative tactic can be found in friendships, where someone may constantly downplay their achievements or qualifications to elicit praise from others. They might say things like, "I'm not really good at anything," or "I've never been successful in life," fishing for compliments or recognition. This not only manipulates others into offering praise, but it also positions the individual as someone in need of validation, which encourages others to take on a nurturing role. Over time, this creates a situation where the person who is using self-abasement can rely on their peers for constant emotional support, sometimes at the cost of the other person's energy or resources. Moreover, self-abasement can also be employed in professional or social settings to manipulate power dynamics. A person may downplay their abilities or achievements in front of a superior or influential individual, pretending to be less competent than they actually are. This often triggers the superior's protective instincts or desire to help, leading them to offer more opportunities, mentorship, or support than they might have if the individual had presented themselves as self-assured. It's a way of subtly shifting the power dynamics in their favor while gaining the other person's trust and favor. While the manipulator plays the humble card to their advantage, they also make the other party feel guilty for not offering more support. This can lead to a pattern where the manipulator continuously demands or receives help, praise, or attention without offering much in return. Over time, this dynamic can become emotionally exhausting for those around the manipulator, but because they feel emotionally invested or even guilty, they may feel compelled to continue the cycle. In conclusion, self-abasement is a potent psychological tactic that plays on our natural desire to help and protect others, especially when they present themselves as vulnerable or inadequate. By inducing sympathy and diverting attention away from their own faults, manipulators can gain control, validation, or support from those around them. Recognizing this tactic is essential for protecting oneself from falling into the trap of false humility, and understanding the motivations behind such behavior allows individuals to maintain healthy, balanced relationships free from manipulation. Number 5. Going slightly wrong. The art of fishing for information. Going slightly wrong is a subtle yet powerful psychological technique that manipulates people into providing valuable information without them even realizing it. This tactic hinges on deliberately introducing small inaccuracies or inconsistencies into a conversation, which triggers the target's instinct to correct or clarify. The beauty of this method lies in its simplicity and effectiveness. It's not aggressive or overtly manipulative, yet it often extracts crucial details or secrets without any resistance. This technique is commonly used by master manipulators, particularly in situations where they need to gather information without directly asking for it. The essence of going slightly wrong is making a statement or assumption that is just off enough to compel the other person to correct it. For instance, if you want to know about a person's work schedule, you might say, "I think you work until 7 p.m., right?" When the target corrects you saying, "Actually, I finish at 6 p.m., you have just gathered a piece of important information without ever directly asking. The target feels compelled to clarify the statement, believing they are simply helping or correcting an innocent mistake. But in reality, you've learned something useful that might not have been shared otherwise. This strategy works particularly well when someone is trying to hide information, whether it's personal, professional, or otherwise. By introducing a false or misleading statement, you trigger a need in the other person to correct you, often revealing the truth in the process. For example, in a conversation with a colleague, you might casually say, "I heard that you're working on the new marketing campaign with Sarah, right?" If they aren't working with Sarah, they will likely correct you by saying, "No, actually, I'm working with Jake on that." By simply making a small mistake, you've learned important details about the person's work dynamics. Manipulators often use this technique because it's disarming. The target doesn't feel like they're being interrogated, and they don't feel threatened by the information they're sharing. It's just a small conversation error that is easy to overlook, making it less likely for them to become suspicious of the intent behind the question. Moreover, when manipulators use this tactic, They can gradually build up a profile of a person, collecting multiple small pieces of information that form a bigger picture over time. This can be invaluable for understanding someone's preferences, habits, vulnerabilities, or secrets, all without ever directly prying. Another reason why this technique is so effective is that it relies on a person's natural desire to provide accurate information. Most people find it difficult to let incorrect information stand, especially when it's about themselves. This compulsion to correct even minor mistakes is deeply ingrained in human nature. When manipulators intentionally misstate facts, they exploit this instinct, guiding the conversation in a way that benefits their agenda. The process is often so subtle that the person being manipulated doesn't even realize they've provided useful information until much later, if at all. For example, a manipulator who wants to learn about a person's financial situation might say something like, "I heard you just bought a new car. Did you finance it or buy it outright?" If the target is uncomfortable sharing their financial situation, they may correct the assumption, "Actually, I leased it, not bought it outright," revealing more than they intended. Over time, this tactic allows manipulators to collect a wealth of information while avoiding direct questions that could raise suspicion. In relationships, this method can be used to learn about a partner's emotions or vulnerabilities. A person may ask, "You must have been really sad after that argument, right?" By doing so, they subtly fish for confirmation of emotional states, prompting the other person to open up more than they might have intended. The target may say, "Actually, no, I wasn't that upset," but in the process, they may divulge personal feelings, providing the manipulator with insights into their emotional state. In conclusion, going slightly wrong is a deceptively simple but incredibly effective manipulation technique. By introducing minor inaccuracies into a conversation, the manipulator prompts the other person to correct them, often providing valuable information that would otherwise remain hidden. This method works because it doesn't feel like an interrogation, allowing the manipulator to gather insights and details without triggering suspicion. Recognizing this tactic can help individuals avoid falling into the trap of inadvertently revealing more than they intended and protect themselves from being manipulated. Number 6. The illusion of scarcity, why we want what we can't have. The illusion of scarcity is one of the most powerful psychological manipulation techniques used to create an artificial sense of urgency and exclusivity. This principle is rooted in human nature. We value things more highly when they seem rare or difficult to obtain. When something appears to be in limited supply, or when time is running out to access it, we are driven to want it, often more than we would if it were available without restrictions. This tactic is widely used in marketing, sales, and even in personal relationships to push individuals toward making decisions they otherwise might hesitate to make. The concept of scarcity is based on the psychological principle of loss aversion, which states that people tend to fear losing something more than they desire gaining something of equal value. When we perceive that a resource, whether it's an item, opportunity, or even a person, is scarce or running out, the idea of losing it becomes far more painful than the idea of gaining it. This triggers a sense of urgency, prompting individuals to act quickly, often without thinking rationally about the consequences. In the consumer world, scarcity is a well-known sales strategy. Limited time offers, while supplies last deals, and phrases like "only X items left" are designed to trigger this scarcity mindset. A prime example of this tactic is the flash sale. When retailers announce that a product is only available for a brief window or in a limited quantity, customers are more likely to purchase the item, even if it's not something they truly need. The fear of missing out, or FOMO, becomes a powerful motivator that overrides logical thinking and leads to impulse buying. Similarly, in the context of relationships, the illusion of scarcity is often used to create attraction or manipulate emotions. If someone perceives another person as being difficult to get or constantly busy, they may find themselves wanting that person more. In a romantic relationship, for example, playing hard to get is a classic maneuver to create an illusion of scarcity. By making oneself seem unavailable or indifferent, a person can trigger the other person's desire to win their attention or affection. The more difficult it is to attain the person's interest, the more attractive they may appear. In social and professional settings, this same principle is at play. People often covet things they can't have, whether it's access to a high-status individual, a prestigious position, or an exclusive social circle. The more inaccessible these things seem, the more people are drawn to them. For instance, if a person constantly hears about how hard it is to gain entry to a particular social group, they may start believing that being part of that group is a sign of success or status, despite having no actual interest in the group's activities. The allure of exclusivity can often cloud rational judgment, making the individual crave the group's approval or membership, even at the cost of personal values or desires. This concept also plays into the dynamics of social media. Influencers and brands often play on the illusion of scarcity by limiting access to exclusive content, products, or services. Phrases like limited edition or exclusive content for members only make followers feel special when they gain access, but it also drives the desire for something that feels rare. This desire often leads to increased engagement or purchases as people want to feel part of an exclusive club, which in turn enhances their social standing or personal validation. The illusion of scarcity is an effective tactic because it preys on our psychological need to avoid missing out on opportunities or experiences. When we believe that something valuable is slipping through our fingers, we are more likely to take immediate action to secure it. In relationships, marketing, or even decision-making, the mere suggestion of scarcity can influence our choices. This feeling of urgency or exclusivity plays on both our fear of loss and our desire for validation, pushing us to act impulsively or in ways that may not be entirely logical. However, it's important to recognize when the illusion of scarcity is being used against us. By understanding this manipulation technique, we can better control our impulses and make decisions that align with our true needs and desires, rather than being driven solely by fear of missing out. Acknowledging that scarcity can be artificially created and manipulated allows us to approach situations with a more rational mindset, enabling us to make choices that are in our best interest, rather than reacting out of a sense of urgency or desperation. Number 7. Anchoring. The first price sets the stage. Anchoring is a psychological technique that refers to the human tendency to rely heavily on the first piece of information they receive when making decisions. This first piece of information, or anchor, serves as a reference point for all subsequent judgments, even when that initial number or idea has no real bearing on the decision at hand. The concept of anchoring is particularly potent in the world of sales and marketing, where businesses use it strategically to influence consumer behavior. Whether consciously or unconsciously, people use the first number they encounter as a benchmark, shaping their perceptions of value and price in a way that guides their purchasing decisions. One of the clearest examples of anchoring is seen in retail pricing. When you walk into a store and see a designer jacket with a price tag of $500, your brain immediately takes that number as an anchor. If you then spot a similar jacket next to it marked at $250, you might feel that the $250 jacket is a great deal, even if its actual value is much lower. This occurs because your mind is comparing it to the $500 anchor, which makes the $250 jacket seem more reasonable, even though it may still be overpriced based on its quality or market value. The initial higher price establishes a reference point that influences how you assess subsequent prices. Anchoring is not limited to physical goods or products. It also affects our perceptions of intangible things like services or even salaries. For instance, during job negotiations, if an employer opens the conversation by offering a starting salary of $80,000, that number becomes the anchor. Even if you were initially aiming for $100,000, the fact that the first offer was $80,000 can influence you to settle for a number closer to that figure. The initial offer can shape how you perceive the entire negotiation, making it harder to ask for a higher amount or challenge the first offer. In real estate, anchoring also plays a significant role. A seller might list a house for $500,000, knowing that it's a little above market value. However, the psychological effect of this initial price influences potential buyers. If the house is then reduced to $450,000, buyers feel as though they're getting a great deal, even if the house was initially overpriced. The anchoring effect makes them more likely to act on the new price, believing it to be a significant reduction. The first price sets the stage for how they perceive the true value of the property. Anchoring is also widely used in auctions. When bidding for an item, the first few bids set the tone for the auction, establishing a psychological anchor. If the bidding starts at a higher price, bidders may be willing to continue bidding at elevated amounts, thinking they are getting a good deal relative to the starting point. This creates a psychological tug-of-war, where people are more likely to push their offers higher than they initially intended because of the anchor that was set at the beginning of the auction. In negotiations, sales conversations, and even personal interactions, anchoring can have a significant influence. Whether it's the initial price in a store, the first offer in a job negotiation, or the first bid at an auction, that first number often serves as a reference point from which all other decisions and actions are compared. This makes it harder for us to think objectively and compare prices or offers based solely on their intrinsic value. The key to recognizing anchoring is to be aware of how easily it can manipulate our perceptions. When we see an initial price or number, our brain automatically adjusts its reference point, making it difficult to view subsequent options without the influence of that anchor. Understanding how anchoring works allows us to be more critical of the information we're given, giving us the ability to make decisions based on facts rather than our automatic reactions to initial numbers or offers. In conclusion, anchoring is a powerful psychological tool that shapes our decisions by creating an initial reference point. From shopping for clothes to negotiating salaries or bidding at auctions, the first number we encounter can have a lasting impact on our perceptions and choices. By recognizing how anchoring works, we can gain more control over our decision-making processes, avoiding the trap of allowing the first price to unduly influence our judgments. Number 8. Mirroring, the silent manipulator. Mirroring is a subtle but powerful psychological technique where an individual imitates the behavior, speech patterns, or mannerisms of another person to build rapport, gain trust, and influence their actions. While it often occurs unconsciously, mirroring can be a deliberate tactic used to manipulate or create a sense of connection with someone. It operates on the principle that people tend to feel more comfortable with those who seem similar to them, and mirroring can make an individual appear more relatable or likable. In many ways, mirroring works as a silent manipulator, exerting influence without the target even being aware of it. The power of mirroring lies in its ability to trigger a sense of familiarity. When we meet someone who behaves similarly to us or adopts the same gestures, posture, or tone of voice, our brain registers it as a sign of shared understanding. We often unconsciously view people who mirror us as more trustworthy and likable because their behavior suggests empathy and connection. This instinctual reaction has deep evolutionary roots. Humans are social creatures, and we have evolved to be more receptive to those who share similar behaviors, as it fosters cooperation and mutual understanding. In social situations, mirroring can be used strategically to make others feel at ease and create a sense of camaraderie. For example, during a job interview, a candidate might subtly mirror the interviewer's body language, tone of voice, or speech tempo. By doing so, they create an unconscious bond, making the interviewer feel more comfortable and positively disposed toward them. This mirroring technique can be the difference between a successful and unsuccessful interview, as it helps the candidate appear like a good cultural fit for the company. In more manipulative contexts, mirroring can be used to subtly influence someone's decisions or actions. A salesperson, for example, might mirror a customer's gestures, posture, and even verbal cues during a conversation. This creates an impression of alignment, making the customer feel as though they are being understood and valued. As a result, they are more likely to make a purchase, as they feel a sense of connection with the salesperson. In this way, mirroring serves as a silent manipulator. No overt persuasion is needed, as the mimicry alone encourages a favorable outcome. Mirroring can also be a tactic in relationships, especially in romantic or personal dynamics. Someone might mirror the other person's behavior to create a stronger emotional bond or to subtly guide the other person's actions. For instance, if one partner begins to speak more slowly or adopts a particular emotional tone, the other partner might mirror those actions to evoke empathy and increase intimacy. This form of silent manipulation can lead to increased influence over time, as one person begins to feel more emotionally connected to the other through their shared behaviors. However, mirroring is not always a harmless technique. In some cases, it can be used as a tool for emotional manipulation. For instance, a manipulative individual might mirror someone's vulnerabilities, interests, or desires in order to gain their trust, only to later exploit that trust for personal gain. This type of behavior is common in toxic relationships, where one person mirrors the other's emotional responses to create a false sense of intimacy and security. Once this trust is established, the manipulator can begin to subtly influence the other person's decisions and actions to their own advantage, without the other person realizing the extent of the manipulation. It is important to note that not all mirroring is manipulative or harmful. In fact, it can be a useful social tool for building rapport, fostering connection, and creating mutual understanding. For example, when interacting with someone from a different cultural background, mirroring certain behaviors or communication styles can help bridge the gap and make the interaction more comfortable for both parties. The key to using mirroring effectively and ethically lies in understanding its potential for both positive and negative outcomes. When used with genuine intent, mirroring can create a sense of trust and connection. However, when used manipulatively, it can be a silent but effective means of gaining control over another person's thoughts, emotions, and actions. To protect yourself from the manipulative potential of mirroring, it's essential to be aware of when it's happening. Pay attention to patterns in behavior, especially if someone seems to be mimicking you in a way that feels insincere or overly coordinated. Trust your instincts and look for inconsistencies in the way someone presents themselves. Being mindful of the influence of mirroring can help you maintain control over your own decisions and interactions, ensuring that you don't unknowingly fall prey to its subtle manipulations. In conclusion, Mirroring is a powerful tool that can be used to build rapport, increase trust, and influence others, often without them realizing it. While it can be a natural and positive way to connect with others, it also has the potential to be a silent manipulator when used with ulterior motives. Whether in sales, relationships, or social dynamics, understanding the power of mirroring allows you to recognize when it's being used on you and take steps to protect yourself from its manipulative influence. Number 9. The power of silence. When less is more, silence is often regarded as a mere absence of sound, but in the realm of dark psychology, it is far more powerful. In fact, silence can be one of the most persuasive tools at your disposal. It has the ability to disarm, influence, and manipulate in ways that words cannot. Whether in social, professional, or personal settings, mastering the art of silence can make you appear more confident, intelligent, and even more intimidating. The strategic use of silence is not just about keeping quiet. It's about knowing when to withhold words and understanding the psychological effect this can have on others. One of the primary reasons silence is so powerful is because it creates discomfort. Humans are inherently social creatures, and silence breaks the natural flow of conversation, causing unease. This discomfort can work to your advantage, especially in negotiations or confrontations. When you refuse to speak, it forces the other person to fill the gap. People often feel compelled to speak more in the face of silence, revealing more information than they might have intended. This is why silence can be a great tactic in situations where you want to extract information or cause someone to second-guess their position. By staying quiet, you give the other person the space to either justify themselves or make a mistake that you can later use to your advantage. In high-stakes situations, silence also conveys authority. People tend to view those who are comfortable in silence as more powerful. This is because silence signals control. The individual is not desperately trying to fill every gap with words. Instead, they exude self-assurance, showing that they do not need to rely on constant conversation to assert their dominance or influence. This effect is particularly noticeable in leadership positions or when dealing with those who may try to dominate a conversation. A well-timed silence can remind others of your status and force them to acknowledge your authority. In social interactions, silence can be used to manipulate emotions. When someone says something that challenges or threatens you, responding with silence can unsettle them, leaving them uncertain of your thoughts and intentions. This is especially true in conflicts or when you want to avoid unnecessary escalation. Rather than reacting impulsively, maintaining silence forces the other person to reconsider their actions, often making them question whether they have overstepped or misjudged the situation. It can create an air of mystery, making you seem composed and in control, while the other person may feel anxious, wondering what you are really thinking. Silence can also act as a subtle, yet effective tool for emotional manipulation in relationships. When someone is accustomed to your regular responses or verbal affirmations, withholding these can cause emotional tension. This is often seen in manipulative dynamics, where one person uses silence to make the other feel neglected, unsure, or desperate for reassurance. While this can be harmful if used with malicious intent, it highlights the profound impact silence can have in altering the emotional landscape of a relationship. A lack of words can create emotional space that shifts the balance of power, making the person on the receiving end feel the need to earn your attention or approval. Moreover, silence often serves as a tool for self-preservation. When faced with criticism or unwarranted aggression, staying silent allows you to maintain emotional control. Responding to every provocation can lead to unnecessary conflict and expose your vulnerabilities. By choosing silence, you demonstrate emotional intelligence, signaling that you are not easily swayed by external opinions or emotions. This is particularly important in situations where reacting impulsively could cause damage to your reputation or position. The strategic use of silence is not always about being completely mute. It's about using pauses and timing to your advantage. Silence becomes most effective when it's deliberate and the timing is right. In conversations, a well-placed pause can force the other person to speak up or make a decision, often in a direction that favors you. This technique is particularly useful in negotiations or situations where you need the other person to commit or make concessions. A pause after you've made a statement or request can pressure the other person into responding, creating a sense of urgency or making them feel uncomfortable about leaving things unsaid. In conclusion, silence is an underappreciated tool in dark psychology that can be used to manipulate situations, extract information, and influence others. Whether in social interactions, professional settings, or personal relationships, silence conveys authority, power, and control. It can disarm others, make them reveal more than they intended, and give you the space to make strategic decisions. Be